Okay, so we are glad that you guys are joining us. This is kind of a table talk. We're going to just talk a little bit about client interface. We're a creative team, and we deal a lot with different clients, all kinds of different clients. So what I wanted to do was just put out there what's like, what do we have to do when we get a new client? What do we have to, how do we approach them? What should we expect? And what's our job as marketers? Anybody?
Yeah. There's a lot of different stages of being a business owner or even being on the marketing decision-making team for a larger business. You could be just starting out with a completely new empty canvas. You need a logo, you need branding, or you could be like established for the past 20 years like we are and wanting something fresh, something new, maybe a new website, maybe a whole new marketing strategy campaign. And every week we're getting people like that, just a broad range, anywhere in between, coming in our door and bringing their situation to us.
What would you say is more complicated, starting fresh with a new client or starting with an existing client?
In our experience here, I would say it's more complicated starting fresh, because usually clients don't really know what they want, but if they already have something to work with, that gives them that baseline of I at least have this. Usually they would want recommendations on how can I improve what I currently have.
Right.
Or if they already have something, maybe they know that there's a problem they need to solve. Like nobody knows what we do, or
Right.
we're not selling anything.
And when we use the term like complicated for somebody who's just starting out with a whole blank canvas, they're starting out from scratch. By complicated, we mean it takes a lot of listening and understanding where they're actually at, because we don't have anything to base it off of. We can't say, okay, looking at your website right now, this is where you are now. This is where we're going to, we have to figure out just by talking to them, where are you right now?
And the other thing you have to figure out is okay, so how are we going to get along?
Right.
How are we going to mix? Because
you don't want to have a bad fit. So if it looks like they are going to need maybe just a freelancer to do something for them, you want to make sure that our relationship is going to work out well, especially for a big marketing campaign, especially for a website. That's something that you want to get a good feel for. And sometimes it just isn't a good fit.
Right. We've had that.
Yeah. And it's not good for either side if that's the case. So that's also our job. It's on us to make sure that when they come in, us having the understanding of what the future of their marketing could look like, to be able to just be honest with them and say, here's exactly what we recommend for you, for where you're at, where your budget's at, what you're wanting to do in the future.
Budget has a lot to do with it.
It does.
Because we know how much work is going to be involved to get them to where it would be best for them to be.
Right. And we're not going to recommend something that we don't believe is going to be successful.
Right. But then when the subject comes up of what kind of budget they have to work with, that's when we have to readjust.
Right.
And that can be, but before we get to that, I wanted to bring up the notion of getting to know their personality, to know the personality of their company, because sometimes they have a gut feel of how they want to project themselves. They have a favorite color, and it may not be the color that we would have picked for their company,
right?
But it's their company. Right? And so we have to find out, okay, how much are we going to be able to speak to them without them being offended or thinking that we're trying to take control away from them. Right. They're like, this is my company. Who are you to tell me what I need to do?
Right.
So, So talk a little bit about what's the right way to engage in that kind of conversation so that you don't start a fight.
Yeah. I find just kind of starting off any meeting, just kind of with a chill vibe, and like really asking about them and their experience in the industry. Because it's not just their personality, but the personality that is common in their industry. That's going to be a big part of positioning that company. So I find that just talking with them, getting to know them, and feeling them out, because people will tell you all about themselves if you're willing to talk to them.
And really, all the different clients that we have, they specialize in certain fields. We're never going to be experts in their fields.
Right.
So they're really the expert in their field. They probably have dreamed about that field, gone to school for that field. They have friends in that field. They know their customers better than we will ever know.
They listen to podcasts about that field.
Right. So we have to hear what they're saying. And I said earlier, before we get in a fight, and I use that term when I'm talking to new clients, is I will literally say, okay, we're going to do some design work, but at some point we're going to get in a fight.
Right.
And it's because you might want to do something that we think is wrong. And so I want to let you know up front that we are going to be, we're going to position ourselves like that. It's because we're working for your company. We want to make sure this project is going to be beneficial to you. And we're not just monkeys that you would hire and we're going to be moving mice around and typing the words you want to type. We're going to be involved every step of the way.
Yeah, effectiveness is important to us, and it's not just like a well-designed website or a great marketing campaign if it's not implemented well. Like if we're not if they're not wanting to spend anything on actually getting the product out there, like they're getting the video out there, then they just spent this on a great video that's not got any viewers, because it's just sitting on their Facebook page.
Right.
And so that's part of what we really push when we're advising clients, is like, here's an effective product that we can make for you, but also here's how to use it best.
So
And we can also speak to our approach whenever we're learning about them, because we're not just learning about them, we're really focused on learning about their customers. And that's something that we can talk about too.
Right. So before we get to the marketing part, I want to talk about design again. And I'm thinking about, we go from oil field industry to dental, to salon,
To church.
So we go all these different genres. And so what is it like as a designer, from a designer's point of view, what is it like having to make those shifts? And is there a process of like, okay, I got to get my mind into that frame of thinking, because you can't, take and go from a salon to a oil field industry and you
Use
have
the
to,
same. Yeah.
you have to make a modification. So what is an effective approach to make that shift?
Well, it's a little tough because on some level, all industries, as far as design goes, they all share foundational elements. That design is just design. So things like contrast, color, typography, layout, that's going to be shared across all industries, because those are just foundational elements of design. But as far as getting looks and textures and things like that, I think it's just important to look at their competitors and see what their competitors are doing. Looking beyond, like if we're designing a website, looking beyond just other website designs. But if there are like print publications that are, hot in the industry, looking at how they design for those. Just getting a lot of inspiration from different media, I think is important.
You mentioned texture, you mentioned typography, color. So when we're talking about those ingredients, them in and of themselves are very deep subjects.
Right.
Like when we're dealing with color, sometimes we spend a lot of time thinking about what's the right color for this particular. In fact, we're working on a client right now. We won't mention names, but they came to us with a already built. It's a brand new company, so they came to us with a logo design, which has already been built and established, and they said this is what we're going to use. We didn't have any part of it, and so
that happens often.
It does.
Yeah.
It does. And so when we decided to go ahead and start thinking about the design for their website, and we were faced with these colors, it affected. It affected our creativity. We're like, oh my gosh, what are we going to do?
Right.
Yeah. A lot of creativity is within a box, though. So
Yeah,
a lot of
exactly.
the best inventions happen under constraints.
Exactly. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Exactly what I was about to say.
Oh.
It's sometimes someone's best work happens within a set of parameters. I mean, I personally have like blank page phobia. Like if I have complete blank canvas, then I can freeze up.
Yeah.
And be stuck with choice paralysis for a while.
Yeah.
And so it can be kind of a boon sometimes.
Sometimes it's as an experiment. It's nice if you do have a blank canvas to just give yourself fake constraints,
Right.
Yeah.
just to get the ball rolling.
Like
Yeah.
a prompt or
Yeah.
a palette or
So over time, things change. I've been in the industry for, this company we started in 1999. And in that time, I think we built our first website was in 1999.
Yeah.
And if I think back, we probably have a record of that website. We probably find it.
Yeah.
But it was completely different than what you would build
Yeah.
today.
A
It was
1999 website.
right. Yeah. It was front
frame
page, Microsoft
slices.
front page,
Yeah.
and I think it was called front page. And you used a tool called Dreamweaver, or what was popular at the time was Flash, and it was animated, and it was fixed to the computer screen, and things moved around from there. So we don't do that anymore. After that, it moved. I think it was around 2003 that content management systems came into existence, and the way of
WordPress,
design-
for example, would be one of those.
Yeah, and the way that it was designed at that point, now you weren't really designing in terms of like doing a Photoshop layout and then slicing it and making it a working website. Now you were designing with components and fixed placement. So over time, you have to adapt with the new designs. How do you keep up with that? How do you stay fresh with what's the acceptable look and what's the industry standard? What are some of the tools or things that you reflect or look at to keep modernizing our delivery of design?
I personally have like a list of different websites that, run frequent up-to-date blog posts, or I have different podcasts that I listen to of people in the industry, both at larger companies or just more indie developers and designers that are doing stuff on their own, and just see how they're handling building things more modular and component based as opposed to a static design.
Yeah. What excites them is a big thing to look out for. Excuse me. When with like heads of the industry or what have you, like what they've got their eye on is a really good way to stay ahead of the trend or the curve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right, because they're going to be maneuvering things in that direction. Yeah. Setting the style.
An advantage is that if we build a site for somebody today, it's probably going to have some shelf life.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Because we're looking ahead at what's
Right.
going to stay consistent. You're also looking at how the search engine optimization is a part of that too, and it's becoming more and more integrated to where the Google's algorithm is becoming more and more human, basically, because it's looking at websites through how a human would look at it. It's looking for how intuitive it is, how easy the information flows, how much information's on there. The ways of the past of like doing what they called keyword stuffing, where you just had paragraphs of keywords that made no sense, but the bot that was crawling your website would look at it and say, oh, this is relevant. That's the past, completely in the past. And now we're having to build websites basically for a human eye, and that's what's performing better. So design is just becoming more and more important, and just going back to understanding that customer is going to influence the way that you lay out the information. And there's always going to be better and better ways to do that. And that's what we're keeping our eye on.
Yeah, and another tricky part of all this is like we're not just designing. In most cases, we're not just designing a design, like a static web page. We're essentially designing tools for them to use,
Right.
especially if it's a content management system.
Right.
Because we're defining what all the typography looks like, what a button looks like, and then making sure that it works because they're going to be in there editing it themselves,
Right.
creating new pages.
Basically, hard coding the style sheet into the design of the web page. Yeah.
And so kind of a hot industry term now and stuff that they do at larger corporations is they design systems, not so much single designs. So everything down from how a button looks, and then all the different components that button could be used in up to an entire page.
Kind of like a style guide, but bigger.
Kind of like it.
Yeah.
So now, in the event that we have a new client come in and we're working with their stuff and it doesn't go well, so what are some of the things that we do to ensure that we're delivering what we said that we would deliver? Bringing expertise to the table, try not to cause an offense with them, but inevitably, occasionally you
Right. There's, of course, there's going to be like certain pitfalls and things we'd want to look out for ahead of time. A lot of times when we're meeting to discuss like a new design, whether it be a website or print material or anything, we want to be talking with as high up a decision maker as possible, or at least somebody who has a good understanding of the decision maker and is able to represent them. And so when we pitch designs, when we deliver mock-ups, that usually makes for a faster process of iterative design where we talk to them about what their needs and desires are and for this website or brochure, and then we make that first mock-up and then revisions from there. As much as possible to have the decision maker tied into that. I think that's a good way to avoid certain pitfalls, because if that's not the case, we could get pretty far into the process and then it's shown for the first time to the person who says yes or no. And if they just have something that like a completely different idea, or if they had a different problem that they were trying to solve in their mind and we didn't know about it, we have to go back to square one and start from scratch. So these are the kinds of, there's a lot that goes into this relationship that we have with a client where we have a lot of experience in knowing, okay, here's how we can both do everything possible to make sure this is a healthy process and relationship, because there's a lot of people that are a part of it.
Yeah, I always use the analogy that because we're heavy into video production too, and early on I would do a lot of TV commercials, and I could do a TV commercial. It was pretty cut and dry. You'd write the script, you'd schedule the shoot, you go to the shoot, you come back, you edit the spot, you send the spot for approval, and then you deliver the spot to whatever TV station it was going to be displayed on, and you're done.
Right.
And so really, if you were to count the time, it's going to be anywhere from 10 to 15 hours, and you're done. And that thing's put to bed until the next time they need another TV commercial. Well, with a website. So I kind of use the simulation like doing a TV commercial is like dating, but a website is like getting married. It's a long-term relationship. You're going to be on the phone a lot. You're going to be talking a lot. And it could be a long-lasting relationship, because we have clients now that we've had on web clients for probably 15 to 18 years. That we built their original site. We built multiple versions of that site.
Right.
And
as the technology develops.
Correct.
Right.
And we currently take care of the site.
Right.
And so it's a long-term relationship. So
right.
It's important that we get to know the client and know when we have the ability to push back or when we are just going to do what they're wanting to do, because they, like, again, at the beginning, they know their industry better than we do.
Absolutely.
Good analogy.
Yep. Okay, so I think that wraps up this discussion. It was about client interface, how we interface with clients.
Right.
Any closing remarks?
I think there's a lot that goes into it, and we only just covered like the surface.
Right.
But I think it was a good introduction into both the client relationship and how design integrates with that client relationship, the design process, and it's always different. Each relationship that we have with clients is unique, and we enjoy every
Right.
single
Yeah.
one.
Yeah, it's an adventure each
yeah.
It's a lot
time.
of fun. You really got to like step into a role with each one because you know, or with their design sense.
Yeah.
You know, you really got to like inhabit. You know,
There's a lot of ingredients.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. So, which is, you know, can be a lot of fun. It's just you know, letting go of you know, the parts of your own like. Got to let go of like certain aspects of your sensibility, and step into something that's compatible with that industry and that.
Yeah,
client.
you have to empathize with both the client
Yeah.
and their customers at
Exactly.
the same time. Yeah, there's a lot we could say.
It was early on. I adopted the phrase just to maintain a good attitude. The adopted phrase that I said was entertain, educate, and deliver more than what was expected.
Yeah,
And it always proved to be good.
right.
Okay, so let's wrap it up, guys. Thank
right.
y'all.
Do we have a music hit?
We have a music hit, and we'll go out with it.
All right. And fade.